organization dedicated to the social solidarity of a global utopian community. Part of the UN's work involves the indoctrination of new values for the global good, which by necessity excludes the values of Judeo-Christianity and the values of America's founding fathers. Some of their beliefs included American patriotism and biblical beliefs which by definition aren't liberal enough for the globalist agenda. J.K. Rowling's considerable financial contributions joined others from global-minded agencies who support abortion, lesbian and gay agendas, and the questionable politics of sterilization for population control to help so-called world hunger.
Well, J.K. Rowling, the famous British author, for example, gives a lot of her money to population control because this is presented as the cause in the media of world hunger. It isn't, of course, because hunger is generally caused by political problems, by tyrants and thugs that manipulate their own people. In fact, today we're making more food, we're growing more food and able to produce more food per acre than ever in our history. So we actually have an abundance of food. And there are tons of agencies that want to give it away. There is absolutely no excuse for anyone going hungry. But the world is not overpopulated. You could take all the people in the entire world and put them in the state of Texas, and each person would have the equivalent space of the average American home, which is certainly generous by the world's standards. And bear in mind, the rest of the world would be completely bare.
J.K. Rowling's political beliefs are further reflected in whom she named her daughter Jessica after. It was in honor of English-born socialist Jessica Mitford, who Rowling admitted has affected her value system greatly. In 1943, Jessica Mitford married radical lawyer Robert Truhaft, who is described as one of the most subversive lawyers in the country by U.S. Senator Joseph McCarthy in the famous 1950s hearings about communism in America. While J.K. Rowling's charitable donations have reached UNICEF's Global Child, her books about Harry Potter have had a much larger and greater spiritual impact. Rowling's has written a 7-part series, each one based on 1 year of Harry's school life. Each adventure, each year, is intertwined with Harry's school lessons taught by practicing pagans and occultists.
Welcome, welcome to another year at Hogwarts.
Along with his 350 fellow students of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Harry, along with millions of children who read his books, learn about spiritism, spellcasting, occult magic, and many of the beliefs of real witchcraft. The books have been translated into over 48 languages, distributed in over 200 countries, and aggressively promoted as a reading incentive program in American schools to children as young as 6 years old. And if they can't read, they can listen to Harry on audio cassettes. So while the Bible has been banned in classrooms across America, Harry Potter's religion of witchcraft is read aloud. Harry's publishers, Scholastic Inc., have provided American schools with curriculum material for over 80 years. Interestingly, with the advent of Harry Potter, Scholastic has been working closely with the media conglomerate AOL Time Warner. Through Scholastic, AOL have the right of entry into classrooms across the nation where Potter fans have provided access to the websites of actual witches and pagans. Furthermore, through their partner Warner Brothers, Harry's pagan spirituality continues to be glamorized to millions through high-tech special effects. Of the first movie, Warner Brothers proudly boasted, it is an actual portrayal of witchcraft. The Pagan Federation of England say Harry's fame has given credibility to the religion of witchcraft, attracting thousands of inquiries by young teens. Fanned by further interest through such TV shows as Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, witchcraft is today the fastest growing religion among teenagers. While parents may justify Harry Potter because at least their children are reading instead of watching TV or playing video games, co-authors of Harry Potter and the Global Child explain the dangers of desensitizing children to to occult and pagan philosophy taught in Harry's school called Hogwarts.
In the Hogwarts school, their curriculum involves various kinds of divination and sorcery, and there is one of the professors who teaches divination and who does in fact go into trance, just like an old-time spiritualist medium, or what today would be called a trance channeler, and a spirit speaks through her. And all of this is presented as very, very normal, mundane part of everyday life at Hogwarts school. And this is in fact very, very dangerous. Apparatus of a real-life witch are being taught as part of the curriculum in this school.
Conjure thee, O circle of power.
In terms of Harry's experience with otherworldly spirits, in the first book even, he has an encounter through this magic mirror with spirits that are supposed to be his dead parents. Harry is receiving counsel and help and power from these disembodied phantoms, these spirits that claim to be his parents, but of course, by biblical standards, they can't be his parents. So we're left with the problem that right off the bat, Harry is using evil spirits to achieve his supposedly heroic ends.
Potter sanitizes occult practices and encourages people to get involved in it because it's cool to be involved in the occult. It's cool to have this power, so go for it. That's a great danger. It's a very subtle thing, but it's a powerful door opener into the occult. That's what dabbling does. You see, when you dabble with the occult, you learn the words, the ways, the think. You laugh at what the occult laughs at. You develop an occult belief system. It's a process. And sometimes that process is overnight, and other times it's step by step by step by step, kind of like precept by precept by precept. And that's the danger of what Harry Potter can do.
I think it is important to realize that as children read these books and they vicariously are going through these classes, they are being made more aware of the occult and its fascination. They are being desensitized to the weirdness quotient, if you will. It all seems very normal, and as they walk through these things, it's basically Witchcraft 101. And by the time a child gets through the third or fourth book, they're going to know a lot more about witchcraft than many witches would know.
While many argue J.K. Rowling's books are only make-believe, fantasy or myth and not able to influence children, Mark Matlock's Dallas-based Wisdom Works Ministries shows otherwise. Almost 50% of teens polled, that's about 9 million teens, have seen the first Harry Potter movie or read the books. Out of those polled, 53% are between the ages of 13 and 14. 12% of those exposed to Harry Potter said they were interested in witchcraft. Of those, 4% said they were a lot more interested now, and 8% were a little more interested as a result of one of the books or movies. Matlock says while this represents a minority of teens, it still accounts for about 5% of all U.S. teenagers and projects to more than 1 million students nationwide who claim that the Potter stories have made them more interested in witchcraft. Whether willfully or innocently, it appears mass media and Hollywood projects their religions of humanism, materialism, consumerism, eroticism, hedonism, naturalism, and cynicism. They also promote the cult of violence and bombard audiences with a variety of pagan practices and dark arts. But people with conflicting values are vying for a voice. A growing number of Hollywood insiders who hold to the faith of America's founding fathers have been working on upgrading values in the industry. Award-winning Hollywood director Mel Gibson dared to come against the powers and has successfully brought change through his movie, The Passion of the Christ. David Manassian, musician, writer, and veteran filmmaker, worked closely with Mel Gibson on the behind-the-scenes documentaries of Mel's film.
Mel Gibson wanted to show that films could be used not to just present anti-Judeo-Christian values, but to present something that could have an impact that would affect people in a positive way for the rest of their lives. He wanted to use the power that he had to influence society, culture, and the world. And he wanted his film to have such an impact that when people would see the film, they would be inspired to go back and to look at the Bible, to see that here was a guy that lived 2,000 years ago that took the sins of the world upon himself and paid for that. And if you believe that and accept that, you can have eternal life. And he wanted to present that message to the public in a way that had never been done before.
During the beginning of the movie industry, the church was very involved. Then the National Association of Theater Owners said the church couldn't be used as theaters, and suddenly movies went pagan. During the 1920s, movies got to be very, very debauched. In 1929, you had the movie Ecstasy, which had 13 minutes of nudity in it with Hedy Lamarr. And then you had another movie where Edward G. Robinson took his little 13-year-old girl and prostituted her to pay his gambling debts. At that point, there were many people that were protesting. There were many censorship boards set up across the country. One movie had to be edited for over 300 censorship boards. And three men, Joseph Breen, Martin Quigley, and Daniel Day-Lord, churchmen, got involved in Hollywood and said to Jack Warner, the head of Warner Brothers, which was the most powerful studio at the time, "We'll help you so you don't have all these attacks from the country." And they started working with the studios, and within 3 years you went from a lot of violence, of course not by today's standards because they didn't have the quality of filmmaking, but you had the nudity, you had the violence, you had the lesbianism, to having a pristine 100% G-rated broad audience films from 1933 to 1966.
In the mid-60s, the Catholic and Protestant film commissions closed their doors in Hollywood. Now, they had exhibited a tremendous influence, moral influence, over movies up until that time. And as soon as their doors closed, the filmmakers in Hollywood were ecstatic, because now they didn't have anybody looking over their shoulders, telling them what they could and couldn't put in their films. And at that point, anything goes.
When the church pulled out in '66, you went from the greatest story ever told about Jesus to the first X-rated movie, which won the Academy Award in 1969. When the church pulled out, you went from the Protestant Film Office to 6 months later, you had Anton LaVey establish the Church of Satan Film Office, and with 3 years after that, he got his movie Rosemary's Baby made, which was the first overtly Satanist movie. He had a role in that movie. You went from Mary Poppins to the first ultra-violent films, The Wild Bunch and Bonnie and Clyde.
And immediately there was a public outcry over this. And so the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, stepped in and came up with this rating system whereby they would supposedly alert parents to the type of objectionable content that was going to be in films. And originally they came up with G for general audiences, M for mature films for mature audiences, R was restricted. People under 17 couldn't get in unless they went with their parents, and then X was for adults only, 18 and over. And almost out of the box, the rating system started to fall apart. The X rating was immediately adopted by the porn industry, and it was actually used as a promotional tool to promote this whole adult film world, which then exploded from that point on, because they wanted the X rating, because you knew you were going to get something that you weren't supposed to see. And the R rating did almost the same thing. People would go to the movies knowing that they were going to be seeing something that they weren't supposed to see, something they hadn't seen in movies before, which was sex, nudity. And the R rating was actually used as a promotional tool on films. A lot of producers and directors wanted the R rating because it attracted a certain audience to their films. 90%
of the people in the United States do not trust the ratings, in spite of what the MPAA says, according to a poll by the University of Wisconsin. And they shouldn't trust the ratings, because the ratings are proposed just by the movie companies themselves for marketing purposes.
According to a study by the Christian Film and Television Commission, American audiences want movies with strong moral messages, and box office averages support that. In 2003, films that were rated G and PG consistently earned 2 or 3 times more money on average than R-rated movies. Movies that contained very strong moral content earned 6 times more money than movies with very strong immoral negative content or very strong pagan, secular, humanist, socialist, homosexual, occult, or anti-religious content. Many people think money is Hollywood's focus.